What is the main forum you guys are on? YouTube? That's where I've been watching you.
We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Rumble.
Okay.
Those are like the
Is
main
Rumble
three.
better? I hear everyone talking about Rumble all the time. I don't know why I don't use it.
I
but-
mean, I don't think Rumble's better. It's just an alternative to YouTube. It's like the X of social media.
But I like that. I'm not a fan of YouTube and their censorship, and
and that's one thing. Like, we wanted to get on both platforms. So eventually, like, if we do get canceled, we're still on X.
Yeah.
We're still building a following on X. Or not on X, on Rumble.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how many followers we have on Rumble, but I don't think it's too far off from YouTube.
It's less than YouTube, but it's not too far off.
Yeah.
Maybe within 100 or 200.
Yeah, our Instagram's growing quicker than anything, and that's just because we have short form content that is coming out every single day. That I mean, I have AI softwares now that are incredible that just schedules the content and stuff.
All right.
But we're gonna have to hire somebody eventually, because like artificial intelligence, like, it's great and all, but it just doesn't do the same like quality of work that people and stuff do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't explore with that stuff as much as I should with my business. Even with social media, I'm just not on.
So, well, what exactly like is your business?
Okay, so people are like, okay, what do you do for a living? And it's really hard because everyone wants just this one-word answer. And there's not really a name for what I do. But essentially, I would put it like this. I own and operate one of the largest non-immigrant visa consulting, recruitment, and placement companies in North America within a specific visa category. And that visa category is H-2A and H-2B. There's all different kinds of visa categories for depending on what you're looking for. And these are seasonal labor programs. And so we own one of the largest companies, and we help employers all over the United States bring in guest workers on a seasonal basis. And then I own and operate a recruitment company in South America where it's headquartered, and it works in 20 countries, recruitment, travel, visas, processing people, all that stuff. And so these two companies work in tangents with one another.
Okay, so
That's cool.
You primarily work with businesses to get work for those businesses.
My
in the
company on
US.
this end, its goal is to help. So the H2 programs, they're highly bureaucratic. You have to get approved by 5 government agencies with tons of deadlines, tons of red tape, tons of responses. Normally attorneys help people with this kind of stuff, but in our industry specifically, it's an agent's world. And the reason is because an attorney's not going to go to Nicaragua or South Africa or Mexico and recruit people for you and perform that HR goal, which is necessary. I mean, if you're a major corporation, you can probably handle the recruitment and all that stuff yourself. But if you're a small to mid-level to even a large corporation that doesn't want your HR team doing what it doesn't specialize in, essentially they hire us out to maneuver the entire process for their corporation, recruit people overseas, get them their visas at the U.S. consulate, and then fly them over for their job. And then after the job's over, these people go home, and if everything worked out, they come back year after year after year, and we just repeat.
How long do these visas, like, what's the work visa?
The maximum is a 10-month visa. These are seasonal visas.
Okay.
They have to, they can stay in the country for 3 years, but they have to, after that, they have to go home for a period of time. You know, most of the people we work with, they've been working for the same corporations for 10, 15, 20 years.
Okay.
They come back to the same employer every year, but it's not a permanent program. It's not an immigration program. It is a seasonal, temporary labor program. And so the industries we work the most with are agriculture, hospitality and seasonal resorts all over the country, fish processing, landscaping, construction, industries that have a huge seasonal labor need, but they don't have a permanent need. So the government authorizes us to get work visas approved for people that will come in and do that.
Yeah.
So,
Are they able to renew these visas, or they have to go back to their home country and then reapply and come back?
But yes and no, or both. You know, there's avenues where they can, transfer to a different job and keep staying around. Most people go, most of these people have families.
Yeah.
They're not kids coming over to work. They are supporting, a wife and children at home. They don't want to immigrate here. They're here because, they might do the same job in Mexico or wherever and make, $200 a month.
Yeah.
And they'll do the same job in the States and they're making $200 a day.
Yeah.
So the economic impact, and then they send that money home. I mean, you go to some of these countries where we recruit people and go to the small towns where we've taken a lot from, and you go there 1 year and it's just poor as could be, and half the town's kids is coming to work for some contractor in some state, and they do that for 5 years. You go back to that village and everyone's got additions to their houses, everyone's got a decent car, and it really increases their lifestyle where they're coming from. So
what are like some of the downfalls that you find? Like, I know you mentioned that there's quite a few like lawsuits and stuff whenever it comes to stuff like that.
Sorry.
Lawsuits that you have to deal with?
It is an extraordinary legal environment. that's what mostly people are paying us for, is to maneuver the legalities and the red tape.
Make sure all the T's are crossed.
You know, to just put it in a nutshell, in order to hire a foreign worker, you have to first work with the State Department of Labor and run ads to try to find a local to hire them first. And then you have to work with the federal Department of the state approves you, then you work with the federal Department of Labor, do the same thing. Then after you go through this rigorous process with the DOL where they force you to run newspaper ads and do all of this stuff to try to recruit a local for this job who you have to hire if they apply. Then after this whole process, they say, okay, this person cannot find a U.S. worker to perform this job. So therefore, we're going to approve them to hire a foreign worker. That's just DOL.
Wow.
Then we have to go to USCIS, which is part of Homeland Security. Then they have to approve the case.
Wow.
Then the State Department, it's handed off to the State Department where the worker can go apply for the visa once. And so there's all these different layers of a process. And it all has deadlines. It's complicated. You can screw things up. If we screw it up, that employer's not getting their workers and their business might go under. So it's a very serious business, and the government treats it very seriously. They do investigations. They bring out wage and hour officers that have guns and badges, and they intimidate people. And it's a pretty wild environment with illegalities. So it's not something to take lightly. We can get in trouble for anything we do wrong. So
it seems like you really have to tiptoe around the industry.
We do.
Why did you choose to do something like this? Was there like a backstory behind it?
You know, you don't really choose to get into something like this. Everyone asks me, how do you do this? And it's like, I don't even know if I have a good story. So like I got through high school, and then, you know, I was kind of floating around. I went to college for a little bit. I dropped out of college and worked with wolves in western Montana for 2 years.
You worked with wolves?
I worked with Arctic wolves.
For real?
Yes,
Really?
for real.
What did you do with the wolves?
Well, I managed a nonprofit organization that had 12 Arctic wolves that were rescued from a place called Ellesmere Island, which is north of Canada.
Yeah.
And they had nowhere to be, and this guy Carl, who had a big 25-acre facility, kind of turned it into an educational and information center. And we lived with wolves for 2 years. We walked in, joined the pack, had to have the whole social structure with them. It was a magical experience. But I didn't make any money. I didn't get anywhere with it. You know, it was all about the experience.
Yeah.
How do you integrate into a wolf pack?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, they can kill you instantly.
Yeah.
So you know that walking in, but they don't believe that. You know, the whole social structure of a pack is the strongest wins.
Yeah.
And as long as they believe we're stronger than them, because you know we've got all these magical tricks. You know, like we can make noise or do this or do that.
Yeah.
But so our alpha male wizard. We used to like
What
throw
was
them.
his name?
His name was Wizard. He's a
Wizard?
big white wolf.
Okay.
And we'd go in and pet him and do all this stuff, but he would, we would try to give them toys, you know, because they get bored in this big enclosure. You know, they're not hunting and doing the things they're supposed to do, and they would just shred everything. You know, just shred them to pieces. And so we got this bowling ball, and we're like, all right, we're gonna roll it down the mountain, and all the wolves would chase it, and it was fun for a while. And one day the bowling ball rolled over Wizard's paw.
Oh no!
And it hurt his paw. He bit the bowling ball in half in one bloody bite.
Are you serious?
One bite.
Oh my
And we kept it on
God.
display in our customer area for people to see. You could see the bite marks on the bowling ball. So I mean, you're walking in there with an animal that could lose its cool for
Just
half a
crush you.
second and crush your skull.
Yeah.
And that realization is always there. But like, so we were feeding the wolves.
Yeah.
And that, you know, just little things like this. Like if you feed a wolf, like in the wolf pack, when we throw a carcass over the enclosure, you know, the alpha male will eat first.
Right.
And then after that, down the hierarchy. And if someone breaks that line, they're getting their asses kicked.
Really?
That's the social structure. So if you feed a wolf, there's two ways that wolf is going to interpret it. Either you are its alpha, giving it food after you've eaten yourself, or you're giving it food before you eat because he's in charge of you. And so you're always thinking about these messages you're sending them and that little social game that they play.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we'd walk in every morning and walk 25 miles, it's 25-acre enclosure, walk way down, do their water, interact with them, and you know, you're just standing there with 14, 15 wolves all around you in an open facility. I mean, you're not in charge, but your goal is to make them think that you are in charge.
Yeah.
How much do they weigh? And how much bigger?
You know, I would say our alpha was about 150, 60 pounds. And people are like, that's light versus a dog. But the thing is, like,
That's huge.
If you looked at their, like, people always like when they're walking in the snow, I think I saw a wolf print, and it's like a dog print. It's like this big.
Yeah.
An Arctic wolf has semi-webbed feet, and they leave a paw print about that big in the snow.
It's like a bear track.
It looks like a bear track.
Wow.
Yes, it's that big. And, you know, their stature, they're so tall, but they
Really?
look a lot bigger than they are.
How big is their head, muzzle?
It was so long ago. I mean, this was 20-some years ago at this point. And I remember I was living there for 2 years, and my sister came to pick me up. and she had a dog. This dog's name was Tila, and it was just, a normal-sized dog. And I'll never forget, I was like there a year. I wasn't around anyone. I was like a hermit in the mountains living with these wolves. My sister picks me up, and her little dog's in there, which was a pretty medium-sized dog. And I saw it, and it looked like a chihuahua. It just completely screwed up my mentality of like how big a dog was, So, but yeah, it was fascinating. And then I ended that, and I wasn't making any money. I wasn't getting anywhere with that. I did it for 2 years, and I had nowhere to go. And my mom met this woman who was from South Africa, and she had started. I grew up in South Dakota, and that's where she was. And she had started she had come over on a work visa. See, back in these days, the whole industry was fraud. And there's a lot of it. There's human trafficking, there's labor trafficking, there's all kinds of ugly stuff that goes on. And that's why the government does try to enforce it. But essentially, she had gotten caught up in a labor scam where some recruiter from South Africa had brought in about 40, 50 Afrikaans workers to, they supposedly had all these jobs lined up. They got the visas, the companies were fraudulent, the jobs were all falling apart, and these people are just sitting in a hotel room. Like 50 people, no work, no money, to the point of starving. All of a sudden, they're just sitting there, and the feds come in and raid the place. Throw everyone in handcuffs, and she ends up getting what's called a U visa for testifying against the guy that did this to her. If you're a victim of a trafficking case or something, they have specific visas that they'll give you to immigrate here. There's all kinds of little things like that in the immigration system. But essentially, she got her citizenship through being trafficked, and then she started, because no one was doing it good back then. There was a few good players, but there was a lot of fraudulent players. She started this small business to help her country people come over on farm visas and work in, the Dakotas and Minnesota and just a little chunk of the northern plains. And that's where we began. And that was in 2005. I started working for her. And so I've done this for just about 20 years at this point.
Wow.
And that's the beginning, I suppose. So it took me a while to get there. But
what is the process like for someone that comes over on a visa that then wants to get full citizenship?
So, well, it depends on what avenue you're pursuing citizenship. The easiest method is marriage. I mean, if you marry a U.S. citizen, they're not going to deny you your own citizenship. It's just a process. So, I mean, marriage fraud is a whole other element of the immigration system. It's the easiest way to do it. But there's employment-based programs where a company can sponsor a worker to eventually get a green card and then their citizenship. That's the PERM program. There's all different kinds. So the fastest one is certainly marriage, but there's different employment-based ones, but it's all backlogged.
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to get a permanent worker on one of these labor programs, the wait time is going to be about 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
And so, but at the same time, our border is just getting flooded by people that aren't being processed, aren't being vetted, aren't being anything. And so it's really frustrating because the people that want to do things legally, they're being badgered by the government and the wait times and the delays, whereas the illegal side is just the Wild West. There's completely no rules. So
it doesn't incentivize them to go through the red tape and the process.
No, and especially the people. What are we incentivizing? We're incentivizing people that don't want to follow rules to come over, because the people that follow the rules, they're stuck in a time loop of, I've been waiting 5 years for this. I've been waiting 10 years for this. Why don't they just go jump up the border?
Yeah.
I mean, the number one reason, it's extraordinarily dangerous. I mean, we have an open human trafficking and labor trafficking ring, the largest probably in the world, at least in any modern Western country, operating directly on our border, and we continue to let it happen. Over 1/3 of women are sexually assaulted or sex trafficked that come in on the border. Most of the children are unaccompanied. They're apprehended into all kinds of rings. Labor trafficking is a problem. We don't care. As long as we can import voters, as long as we can who knows what other motives or incentives are. I've been saying that for 20 years. That's become recently a Republican talking point, and I think they're right about that. The only incentive to have an open border is the ability to import a new class of voters. And I do think that is the end tactic. I think they've caught a hold of the fact, you can let these people vote. If we can bring in a few million a year, they're all going to vote for us.
But how can they vote without citizenship?
That's why they fight voter ID laws. I mean, in so many states, you don't need an ID to vote. So they're really importing a brand new class of voters. And at this point, I mean, they're giving them free everything. My clients have to spend thousands of dollars to try to hire a legal worker through me, through arduous processes. And yet,
it just incentivizes criminal
It
activity.
incentivizes criminal behavior.
How much does it cost to go? You said 3 to 5 year wait time. What is the cost?
Well, the employer usually has the burden of that, but well over $10,000 if you're doing all the process to hire a permanent worker.
Wow.
So you mentioned visas, green card, and citizenship. Can you just break down the difference for me real quick? Like
yeah,
I've heard
people are
the
foggy.
difference
A
before.
visa is an entry document.
Okay.
Okay, to enter a country, unless they as Americans, we generally don't need visas because every country's like, you guys can just travel here. And technically, you get a visa when you arrive. You just get a 30-day visa or a 90-day visa you don't have to apply for. But a visa is just an entry document.
Okay.
To enter the United States, you need some sort of visa. In most instances, there are exceptions. But the visa is not your status. The visa is your ability to enter. That's all that a visa is.
Okay.
And so, sorry, what was the question again? I think
Like the difference between visa, green card, and citizenship.
a green card is a path to citizenship.
Okay.
So a green
Okay.
card, you're basically considered a type of permanent resident, and eventually you can apply for citizenship as long as you don't, screw that up. So
Okay.
but a visa is a temporary entry document. It's not designed to be anything more. Different visas allow you to enter for different purposes. A visitor's visa it allows you to enter for a tourist. A business visitor's class visa is if you're a foreigner trying to enter to maybe start a business in America and
Right.
you want to look into it. What I'm doing is temporary work visas. There's also permanent work
Gotcha.
visas, all different categories of them, and then there's green card and immigration processes as well. So
Yeah.
that's all of what USCIS does, not just the immigration stuff, but it gets into labor programs and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
because I thought about going for Thailand for a couple months, and I was gonna go on like a Muay Thai visa, just to go and train
Cool.
Muay Thai.
Yeah.
So it's basically the same thing. Just
Same
like
thing.
like a reason why you're here. Why
Yes.
are you coming here? Basically.
What is
Okay.
the process like if an illegal immigrant is caught?
Well, I mean, that's changed over time. I mean, people want to get into, get into the history. So I've done this since the Bush administration, Bush Jr. And I've been through every administration since then. And administrations really do dictate policy in these
Really?
programs. When we get a president change, everything's changing in my programs, and we have to adapt. And with every president that I've gone through, one of the first things they do is change the H-2A or H-2B programs. And it's one of the last things they do going out. When Obama came in, though, it's really funny because people don't remember him like this. He was the deporter-in-chief. He deported more people his first 2 years. Now, don't you maybe fact check me on this because I think I'm right. I don't know if there was a period where Trump got a little higher, but in general, Obama was a mass deporter. I mean, to the degree he was screwing up with the dairy industry all over the country. ICE
Really?
was raiding dairy farms. 99% of dairy farm workers in the United States are illegal immigrants. It's
Really?
been that way for decades. You don't drink milk because Americans are milking cows. Americans will not milk cows at 4 a.m. This is
Yeah.
not ever going to happen unless things change dramatically. And so Obama was setting out ICE to raid dairy farms, and these dairy cows, they need to be milked 2-3 times a day, or they're gonna get sick. They could potentially die.
Really?
Yeah, I
didn't
mean,
know
like it's like holding in a pea forever or whatever. Your bladder
Yeah.
will explode eventually.
Yeah.
And so it was a really dangerous situation for the industry. And the Secretary of Agriculture of the state of South Dakota had one of his deputies had called me and asked me to help bring in workers for these people, but it was hard because dairy is not seasonal, it's year-round, and so the
Yeah.
government doesn't want us helping them. But they were just sending these dairy workers home, leaving these cattle to die, and that was ICE. And so back
Wow.
then it was serious. Violations get in trouble. Right now, that's gone up and down over time. The current environment under this administration is, I think that they want these people to come here. They don't want them to not be able to work and do whatever. So I think they're really turning a blind eye to people hiring illegals.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in my industry, they're picking up enforcement. They're making it harder. They're making our responses more difficult. Everything is getting harder. And the message I get from this White House is I feel like they want us to give up on legal programs and just accept the fact that we'll have open borders and screw you guys. And that's
Yeah.
really what it feels like. So I'm hoping for an administration change just to get this guy out because through all of the presidents I've been through and all the administrations that have headed these programs, this has been by far and away the worst.
The worst.
So.
Do you find it easier with Democratic or Republican?
It's a very funny industry where we have allies and enemies on both sides. There is a big chunk of Republicans that think every foreign worker that comes in is somehow replacing a U.S. worker. They don't get into the numerics. The baby boomers are the largest generation to have ever existed. They did not have enough kids to replace themselves in the labor market. They started retiring during COVID. The peak of their retirement is about 2030. We did not create enough babies to replace all the jobs that they will walk away from. So we have to have immigration. And there's so many Republicans out there that believe that, no, anyone that comes in to take a job, that's stealing an American job. Well, let's do some math and see if that's even true. It's not true. We didn't have enough babies to replace our aging population, and so we do need to have a component of immigration to make things work. But it needs to be legal. and vetted and have background checks and not be a Wild West show that's run by criminals and cartel organizations. And I mean, I don't even like talking about that. I mean, truth be told, my business is in direct competition to the cartel business. I mean, I went down to Mexico one year and I went to Culiacan in Sinaloa. And we were invited by the government to try to work with visa workers there and recruit people from there. And the government, they put me on TV. I was on TV in all of Mexico, and I didn't even have a translator. It was the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
But wait, where was I going with this? What were we talking about again?
So you're in direct competition with the cartel.
Yes, no, and I got on TV, and then I went to the bar afterwards, and I was hanging out, and everyone knew me because I was the dude on TV that day. And one of the guys there that had been in the industry for a long time, I knew him, and he came up to me, and he was like, he had a beer with me, and he was like, "Don't ever do that again." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Dude, that's the cartel business. You're in Sinaloa talking directly about compete." And it is. I mean, they're making $10,000, $15,000 a pop every person they cross up the border. It is big money, big business. And what we do is the exact opposite. And so I really do look at my direct competition is illegal immigration. Now, I'm not against illegal immigration just because it's my competitor. The atrocities that go with it are insane. The sex, labor, human trafficking component it's ugly. So
where do these trafficked, especially the women and children, like where do they go once they're across the border?
You know, you see these little like motel I mean, if they're women, they keep them all drugged up and they're at these little shoddy motels. They move them around. Same with labor trafficking. If someone puts in a phone call or something, they're gone. And so they move these people around. If it's a sex ring, usually they keep them drugged up so they're easy to control. With labor, I mean, they take their documentation. They have control over their stuff, and these people are scared that they're going to get in trouble for being here illegally. So they hold. I mean, when you're an illegal immigrant, everyone can take advantage of you. You have no rights. You have no protections. You're always worried about deportation. It's hard to open bank accounts. Everything that goes with it. So you're just you're a constant victim of predators and criminals. Is what takes place. And that's why it's bad to have a basic slave labor class of illegal immigrants operating within your country. And yet, you know, we're at a point where the Democratic Party seems to be entirely for that, and the Republicans kind of want to... Well, back to your question, okay, so we have Democratic allies, we have Republican allies. It used to be more allies on the Democratic side. Now we have more allies on the Republican side. There are Republicans out there that recognize these labor needs are important. You know, and on the Democratic side, Murkowski up in Alaska, you know, the seafood processors, you wouldn't eat salmon if these workers aren't going to get here. It's not going to happen. And so just all of those little things. But we really, right now, the Democratic Party has strangely turned very against these programs while they're opening the door of the border for everyone to get exploited. And it pisses me the hell off. It really, truly does. President Obama specifically referred to the H-2B program publicly as a form of modern slave labor. Meanwhile, the people flooding up the border illegally, they're working for pennies on the dollar to what my people are getting paid on these visa programs with no regulation, no oversight, no anything. So Democrats are really confused, and maybe it's confusion, maybe it's by design. The average Democratic voter is very, very confused about those matters.
So what is your ideal turnout for the upcoming election that would benefit your business the most?
Well, I would prefer Trump, even though that's kind of, I don't know what he'll do, but I know he'll be friendlier towards these programs than Biden. I also expect the first thing he'll do is a massive deportation program targeting people who have criminal records. And that's fine by me. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think he'll focus on that and not people that are just here for jobs. There'll probably eventually be some level of amnesty for most of these people. It's really, you can't deport 3 million people. You know, this gets into Cherokee Trail of Tears stuff. You know, you're literally moving mass populations by force. That's an ugly business in any way. So, the people in charge, they know once these people get here, it's really hard to get them out. So, you know, if you can import voters, they're importing voters. And I don't see any other benefit that anybody gets to it other than the corporate donors, they like the cheap labor. And so that is a small element of keeping it going. So.
What are some of the common industries that are propped up by illegal immigrants? You mentioned dairy. What else is
Meat processing, dairy, lots of forms of agriculture, landscaping, construction. Anything Americans don't want to do anymore. Pretty much anything involving hard physical labor, out in weather conditions, early mornings, stuff. Do you want to do that? You guys want to go lay brick at 4 a.m.? I don't want to do that. I'm not
I barely mow my own grass, dude.
Yeah, exactly. So, you take a job that no one wants to do. But also, on the resorts and stuff, we're bringing in people at seasonal places in like Maine and Western South Dakota and Montana and Alaska, and these are businesses that only open 6 months out a year.
Okay.
It's really hard to find someone to relocate to a small town in Maine or South Dakota for a 6-month job. The housing doesn't necessarily exist. A lot of the companies we work with have had to build dormitory housing.
Interesting.
I mean, especially like one of the biggest districts we provide workers for is in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's where Mount Rushmore is, and a lot of national attractions. It brings in millions of people a year, and we bring in thousands, maybe not thousands, at least probably close to, hundreds at least of foreign workers just to that small region. And I mean, the number of foreign workers that come into that area is almost greater than the population of the region itself.
Really?
So you've got to deal with issues like housing. You've got infrastructure issues. It's complicated. How does a region that houses only 50,000 people throughout the majority of the year host 3 million visitors during a 6-month period, and how do they have the labor to do that? There's not enough locals to do that, and so seasonal labor it's a complicated business versus permanent hiring.
And you help these people find homes too. And
Our clients, we leave that. Our clients' job is to do that.
Okay.
So but we require them. The housing has to be set up. Everything.
How many people do you think a year you bring over?
So with farm visas, we're doing about 2,500 workers a year.
Wow.
And with H-2B visas, that's anything non-farm, we're doing between 2,000 and 3,000. So right now we're bringing about 5,000 workers from about 20 different countries into about 38, 39, 40 states.
Really?
So,
That's incredible.
it's quite a bit. Yeah.
it's a big operation for the industry. I mean, it's a small industry, but it's hard. It took us a long time to grow into that.
Yeah.
Do you keep up with any of the immigration stuff going on in Europe?
Not probably a ton, but I mean, I try to keep up with immigration everywhere to degrees. Yeah, they have bigger problems than us.
You think
I mean, people just flood up the Mediterranean.
Okay.
They arrive in boats. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have as much money as us. I mean, it's a big problem. I remember last time I was in Italy, I just saw the influx of immigrants there versus other times I had been to Europe, and I was really surprised.
Yeah.
So it's definitely changing the cultural fabric. It's changing the economic fabric. But it's very similar to us. But a lot of the European immigration crisis is a direct result of the refugees that we've created as our United States wars in Syria and Afghanistan. So it's a funny mix of things. We started these wars. We created millions of refugees, and they're all flooding into Europe. They're not flooding our border. So if I were the Europeans, I'd be pretty pissed at us. But.
Yeah, for sure.
So it seems like this takes up a lot of time, or like, I don't know anything about it, but it seems like it takes a lot of time. Like you're just thinking about it all the time. Do you ever have time just to like debrief and relax?
I feel like I am the busiest person in the world. And
It
every
seems
time I
like
feel
it.
like I should be up to a place where I should rest, they're always changing the rules and the regulations in my program. So you've got to be on your feet in this business.
Yeah.
So the minute you learn something, you've got to learn something new. So there's never like, oh, I finally became an expert in this, we're good to go. If you're not learning today, tomorrow, you're going to be out eventually.
Yeah.
Because it's just constantly changing.
Yeah.
And the legalities, the case law, the litigation within it it's very profound.
Yeah.
So.
Does it ever get like so overwhelming that you just need to like take a break from it?
Well, if you'd like to buy my business, I am selling. So,
Really?
I mean,
Okay.
Point is, I would love to sell my business. I would love to walk away. I love what I do. It's part of my identity. I would be crazy when people ask me what I do if I was just like, I don't know, what do I do now? But I mean, it burns you out. I am physically exhausted. I don't know how I'd ever sell my business. There's probably 20 people that have the knowledge that I have in the entire world. Maybe 50. Someone would need to be able to run my business, and I can't imagine anyone doing that without
It's not a plug and play
exceptional amount of
type
years. So how do I ever sell my business? I don't know. It's a really hard concept. I would consider it if I ever had an offer, but to me, it's something I don't know if I'll ever be able to walk away from as long as I want to make money off.
I was going to
it.
say, what if you did something where there was a fund that bought your business and just hired you on for the time being, like to train somebody else to do that?
I would
that
totally
be something you'd be interested
into
in?
that. But finding the right buyer. How do you even look? You know what I mean? Where do you look for a buyer for my business? I get people like, I'm selling a restaurant, I'm selling a landscaping company.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to do what I do. It confuses the hell out of people just talking about it. And so, I mean, I would be very interested
Well,
in the
there,
idea.
like I know people that would buy the business just to buy the business, and
Yeah.
then they would find somebody, or if you recommend somebody, to train for a couple years and pay you
Sure.
salary based on that.
Sure.
If that's something you're actually interested
I would
in.
totally be interested in. And I don't know if I get cold feet and be scared at the end, but like I've thought about it for years. I would love to walk away and cash out. You know,
Yeah.
my business got appraised for, I think it was 8.6 million when we added appraised last time. So you know, it's not like, oh, I'm uber wealthy, but you know, it's a comfortable chunk of change to be able to
Yeah.
walk away from.
Yeah.
So
I have somebody I can connect you with
all right.
if it's something you're actually
I
interested
am
in.
totally open to having a conversation about
Okay.
that. I have been burned out for years. I just feel
Yeah.
exhausted. It's like you're running uphill forever and you'll never reach the top of that
Like
hill.
you're running
Yeah.
a quicksand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so how do you de-stress? Do you have hobbies?
Well, I mean, for years I struggled with drinking too much, and it, you know, I hit about mid-30, and I was not mid-30, but 35-ish, and I was just like, my body can't do this anymore. You just get used to drinking a lot to deal with the stress, and that was a huge battle. And I reached a point where I was like, okay, I'm either going to become a severe alcoholic and die early,
Yeah.
or I have to find another avenue to deal with the stress. So I really got into weightlifting and exercise and trying to be as stable as I can with that. That
Yeah.
even gets hard. You know, I got my busy season, and it's nuts. And then in the summer, I'm traveling. I'm all over the world, and I hate. It's the hardest thing to try to keep up exercise patterns when you're at a different hotel all the
yes.
time.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
I struggle as much as I want to be good at it, but that's helped dramatically. Just getting a healthier lifestyle of exercise and meditation and stretching and just doing things that were not alcohol to
Yeah.
find stress relief in life.
Well, even during the summer, you're traveling for work, aren't you? Or-
Yes, yeah. I'm traveling all over. I usually hit up about 5 or 6 countries a year.
So that's like you doing recruitment, basically.
Yeah, and we also do team building things. Half of our staff is in Paraguay in South America, and so we don't ever see each other, even though we work around the year. And once a year, we just pick a country and we all get together and have a big group meeting.
that's
So
cool.
it's fun. We do cool stuff like that.
Do you work with Americans that try to get citizenship in other countries?
No, but I get asked that all the time, and I do have referrals that I give people out because I do know really good companies. I've met the folks in El Salvador that run a business that help people do legal immigration there, and I've wanted to do it myself, but there's complications. And then there's a few other companies out there that I've gotten to know that they provide great services for Westerners
Really?
looking to relocate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, what countries would you recommend Americans getting like a second passport in?
Well, in all honesty, my heart is in El Salvador. It's
Okay.
not in this country. Absolutely love it there. I've been there 5 times over the past, I think, 14, 15 months. It became a big part of my business. I'm a huge Bitcoiner, and so that kind of got El Salvador on my radar. And one of the things I just loved, we're bringing in some Salvadorian workers. And one of the reasons, so the government, they limit the amount of visas that I can bring in every year. There's
Really?
a limited amount, and then there's lotteries. Everyone's fighting and as you know, people are flooding over the border, we're limited down to these numbers.
Yeah.
And so the government does all these things. Sometimes they release more visas, you know, throw a little carrot at us. But they did this thing a few years ago called the Northern Triangle, whatever. And that's where they said, okay, we'll give you way more visas, but only if you hire people coming out of the Northern Triangle of Central America. And that's Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Belize, and Nicaragua.
Yeah.
We're already in Nicaragua, but that's just a beekeeper thing. We don't do anything else there. And I was getting to know some of these Salvadoran workers, and they were sending, instead of using Western Union to send their money home, which had always been the status quo, and Western Union just gouges the
Yeah.
fees out of them, they had switched to the Bitcoin Lightning Network.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm super into this. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to El Salvador. I want to see
That's
what these people are
interesting.
like. I've
Yeah.
never done anything like this. Or I mean, I've never done anything like this, but I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the people. And we had to choose, like, we wanted to focus on recruitment in one of those countries from the Northern Triangle to start to supply people with because we get extra work visas. So I went down to El Salvador, and I was paying for taxis on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. I met all
Really?
kinds of cool
Really?
people, but
That's cool.
I just fell in love with what is happening there.
Yeah.
I've traveled all over the world. I've been to 37 countries. I've been to many of them 10 to 20 times. So
Yeah.
I've traveled a lot. And El Salvador was the first time in my life that I felt what I would call widespread human societal optimism.
Really?
Where, you know, every country you go to, the government, shit's going to shit, everything's worse than it used to be. That's always the consensus. In El Salvador, the consensus of the people was that things are getting better.
Yeah.
We're getting safer. Everything is going in the right direction. I've never felt that on a societal level. I asked maybe 100 people, taxi drivers, restaurant owners. I was like, is this Bukele popularity bullshit? You know, are they fudging the numbers? And I think maybe 2 people had one bad thing to say, and it was like 99 raving reviews. And I've never seen such unity in a country. I've never seen such an embrace of freedom and individualism, like the exact opposite direction of what our country is going. So I love El Salvador for a second passport. They also have no property taxes, which to me, property taxes are criminal, and it makes it a very, very great place to invest. I also think it will be like the Singapore of the East in time over their Bitcoin bet. And so I think it's a great place. There's other awesome countries, definitely, but I love El Salvador for a second passport. It's also only a 3-hour flight to Atlanta, so you can get in and out quickly, still see family. I love it. It's a great place.
What about for a super gringo like me?
Well, so like El Salvador is for you, for anyone. Salvador, like you can find cheaper places if you want to do like Colombia and Paraguay are great locations. I've had an office in Paraguay for 15 years. I love it there.
Really?
Downside, it's a 10-hour flight down there. How often am I going to come back here and see my family if I'm way down there at the bottom of South America?
Yeah.
So that was the downside. Colombia, way cheaper than El Salvador. El Salvador prices have gone up because of the safety, but Colombia is not as safe, and I don't know if you're going to see the same direction going there. So I'm really into El Salvador. I'm thinking about buying a property right on in San Blas, which is right on the coast there, and kind of just Airbnb it out, and then using it as a personal vacation property when I can get down there.
Yeah,
something
that'd be
along
sick.
those lines.
What are some of the more dangerous South American countries to avoid?
I don't feel like Latin America is generally very dangerous. I mean, definitely, obviously, Venezuela right now.
Okay.
Because, communist revolution, poverty, it's insane. The only countries in South America I haven't been to are Suriname, Guyana, and French Guyana. Mm-hmm. And I think Bolivia. I haven't been to Bolivia. But the reasons I haven't been to those places in general is because generally they're less safe. I mean, Chile, I used to go to Argentina a lot, and that isn't as safe as it used to be. They've really taken a downturn. But I do really monitor country safety, and I try to be most conscious of that, especially the older I get.
Yeah.
But South America has generally felt very safe to me compared to a lot of places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the big fear, too, is like the government collapsing, seizing your money. But if you store it in DeFi, and you don't have to worry about that
Solves
nearly
the problem.
as much.
That happened in Paraguay a lot. They would go through these good eras, and all these Americans would come buy farmland, and then they would have this socialist revolution, and the government would seize all the farmland and all this stuff.
Shit.
And so, with Bitcoin, you don't have to worry about that. That's such a great use case for it. Of course, you're down there with your Bitcoin wallet. The government can't. I mean, if they can seize your property, I suppose. But
Yeah.
Well, and you can't trust State Department warnings. I used to go off of those. They still have El Salvador as a level 3 travel warning. The State Department does.
Is
and
that
it's
the
just
highest level of warning?
5 is the highest level, but 3 is generally the limit where I quit going. I'm like 1 or 2, I'm fine. 3 is where I'm like, maybe I'm not going to go there. But they have El Salvador as a 3, and it's been the safest place in the Western Hemisphere for over a year. So the information coming from the State Department is often very lagging.
Yeah.
What are some of the 5s?
Some of the 5s, I mean, these are going to be places like Venezuela or Congo, like really, Iraq, like, those are going to be 5s. Just lots of places in Central Africa and Middle East and things like that. You know?
Where's been like the dangerous place you've gone where you like actually felt unsafe?
That's a good question. I think there were some times in South Africa where I felt a little bit of an element of danger. That can be an extremely dangerous country. A few times in Mexico. I mean, people say, what's the most dangerous country you've been to, Kevin? Mexico, by far and away. It just is. I mean, to me, Mexico isn't a country. When I was in Sinaloa, the Sinaloan government is basically like controlled by the Sinaloa cartel, and the feds don't have control there. If they go in to arrest El Chapo or whoever, they're going to get resistance. I mean, Culiacan was the cleanest city I've ever seen in Mexico, and I found out the cartels just dump so much money making it nice and safe and beautiful, and the feds don't even have power there. So like you look at Mexico, it's like Mexico City, it's got a little power around it, and that's where the feds are at, and then the rest of these territories of Mexico are kind of almost like independent countries in some ways. It really is the Wild West to me. Mexico is. It's fascinating and I love it. But there's places I would never drive in the highway in Mexico.
Really?
They got fake cops all over the place. They'll pull you over, steal your ID. Getting in a taxi in Mexico City, they got all these fake taxis. And if you don't know this, you get in the wrong one, they kidnap you. The door's automatically locked. They drive you out and go ransom you off to your family for as much money as they can get. Mexico is, I've been in the most dangerous situations in Mexico, for sure. So,
is there one specific situation you were in you'd like to share? If you want us to cut it out, I will. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious.
You know, I honestly can't think of one.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is, but
It's
like
just the vibe you got.
You know, it often is. Like I remember once I was walking in the Centro Historico in Mexico City, and that's a place I used to like almost live part of the year. I love Mexico City. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Yeah.
And I noticed, you know, you got to be aware of your environment when you're in a place like that. And I noticed this guy was following me, and he followed me for blocks and blocks, and he would not quit making eye contact with me. And they've got all these kidnapping rings. They look for Westerners like me to kidnap, and then, you know, your parents are going to give them money. And so that's always my most conscientious thing in Mexico. And so I think I was maybe being followed by one of those guys for a while, and I just started walking really fast, so I ditched him. But,
Yeah.
you know, I've had a few little instances like that, but I can't say that there's been a lot of times where I really felt, oh, this is so dangerous or whatever else. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe I'm oblivious, but I don't feel like I am. So I think generally I've felt very safe where I've traveled, but I've avoided the more dangerous realms of the planet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So you've mentioned beekeeping a couple times. Once
Yes.
before we got started.
Yeah.
Can you like explain that a little bit more? Because like my dad started doing that for our like farm and ranch land. Just started
Okay.
beekeeping to save on taxes.
I
and
love
stuff.
beekeeping. It's a very interesting topic. Most people are very bored by it, but we're the largest agency in the United States that brings in workers for the commercial itinerant beekeeping industry. And so beekeeping is fascinating. Most of the money in beekeeping is not in honey. It's
Really?
in pollination.
Oh.
Like so if a beekeeper will take his beehives and put them in, let's say, an almond orchard in California during that 3-week pollination period, the almonds produced in that orchard will increase tenfold per acre.
Really?
And so these companies that produce, you know,
Interesting.
nuts and avocados and all these things, they pay beekeepers top dollar to relocate their hives across the country and to pollinate their crops. That's where the big money is at in beekeeping. And so
Really?
these guys are, you know, they're moving, you know, 60,000 beehives. We're talking, you know, 100 truckloads maybe. They'll have them in the Dakotas producing honey in the summer, and then they'll flip them out to California to pollinate, you know, almonds for a few weeks, and then they'll be down in Florida pollinating citrus fruit, and this all makes agricultural products cheaper. The price of money you would pay for almonds or avocados if it wasn't for the beekeeping industry would be astounding.
Really?
So it's a very fascinating industry,
Yeah.
and we bring in Nicaraguan workers to do the work because they have experience with Africanized bees, and it's become a big problem in the United States. If you remember the old movie Curly Sue, you remember that one from back? Well, the guy dies from Africanized bees. I think it's in Texas at the end of the
Oh,
movie.
wow.
But that was when they started moving up. But these beekeepers, these African bees are aggressive. They will
Yeah.
kill you. They will attack you. They're nothing like European bees. And the Nicaraguans have a lot of experience with them. But these Nicaraguan guys, they come from these indigenous villages way up in the mountains where, like, the generational trade is beekeeping. They've been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so it's this perfect mix where we bring in these guys from these little villages. They come and work for American beekeepers. They go home. Everyone wins. It's great.
Wow.
Okay.
You know, we actually have an entire policy about bee swarm attacks and how to handle that.
Really?
Yeah.
What is
At
that
the
like?
fire department?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
A specific policy
Okay.
just on bee swarm attacks.
What's something y'all have to do?
Basically, you put on all your gear in the truck, and then you basically spray them down with a fog cone of foam. You foam
Really?
them so they can't. Yeah.
Huh.
But it's scary. Like, you have to be able to retreat back into the rig, or they'll die. They get pissed off at you.
Yeah, that's
It's a
terrifying.
very real thing. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So how do these immigrants help with the beekeeping? It sounds like it's a pretty expensive operation.
The beekeepers are?
Well, yeah. Whoever. Yeah. How does that?
Yeah, I
work?
mean, some of them are very large operations. Yeah. Well, essentially, they've got great skills, but they're just willing to do it. I mean, to find a worker that's willing. I mean, it's hard work. You're out there in 100 degrees, 80-pound hives, moving them around, working with bees. You got to have your suit
Yeah.
on so you don't get stung.
Yeah.
It's brutally hard work. Then you're moving across the country. You know, you're driving trucks with bee hauls out to California, then to Florida. So not only do you have the component of extraordinarily difficult work in extreme weather conditions, outdoors at all hours of the day and night, you've also got to deal with the traveling aspect. So I mean, how do you find a U.S. worker that's willing to travel, perform that level of work, and also it's seasonal. We don't have year-round security for you. So these
Yeah.
are very difficult components to solve for a company within the aspect of labor.
Okay. Yeah, see, I didn't know you were doing it for the bee, like, for an actual company that does it. I thought you were doing it like tax.
No.
savings
So
type
we
thing.
bring in, so our company, we bring in hundreds of beekeepers for some of the largest beekeeping corporations in the world. So I've been around the beekeeping industry for a long time. I've spoken at their conferences. I've gotten to know them all. I know a lot about beekeepers. So.
Really? That's interesting. How long now do you think you've been?
Have I been doing this?
Doing that, but like with
Well,
bees
the bees were there from the
specifically.
beginning. When I started working for Tina's company, she had already started making intervals because the Dakotas are where the majority of honey is produced in the United States. That's where I'm from. They have the finest honey fields in North America, and so all the best beekeepers in the country, I mean, they may be coming from Florida, from South Carolina. They all send their hives up to the Dakotas during the late summer for the clover honey harvest.
Yeah.
and so that's a really big thing.
Yeah. How do you make time for your family? Doing
It's
everything
hard.
that you're doing.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you building this business has taken its toll on my family, on my wife, on my kids, on my personal life, the ability to, like, most people I know and associate with are something through work. You know what I mean? I don't have a lot of friends that are outside of that world because I don't have a lot of time for it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have had enough time to be, a father to my kids as much as I would want to be. But, that's the sacrifice you make if you want to be an entrepreneur. People just see, the money, the success, the whatever, and I want that. And I know personally, most people would never sacrifice what I have sacrificed to build what I've built.
Yeah.
And it's not really about the money. I'm just a builder. I don't know what I would do. I would probably kill myself if I was just sitting around at home doing nothing. And so I've built this. And do I think it was worth it? Probably not. I mean, in all honesty.
Really?
But it's cool. I'm glad I did it. But it took its toll indefinitely.
If you did decide to sell and end up getting out of it, what do you think you would try to pursue? Like, what's something that interests you?
Well, I'm a big investor. I manage my investment portfolio full time, and it's pretty large. And so that's another semi full time job for me. I could continue to focus on that, and I'm sure do very well for myself. But I would get bored just doing that too. I think. I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to start a bakery. I know that sounds
Really?
stupid, but it's like I love making bread. It's so like relaxing and meditative to
I've
me. I
heard
don't know
that
why.
from multiple people. I've heard
Yeah.
that making bread is like super
Well,
satisfying.
I've had a stressful job. I want a de-stressing job.
Yeah.
So I'll make some bread.
So you're a sour bro.
What's that? Yeah,
Sour bro,
for
you're
sure, man, for sure.
Yeah, these guys at work are like talking about sourdough bread. They're like, "Oh, we're sour bros, man." They're talking about all
Really?
that being good.
I haven't
Yeah.
heard that term, but I guess I am a sour bro. So.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is just about to turn 16. So he's 15. So it's 15, 13, 11, and 8.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I got my hands full. Yeah.
And you said you used to homeschool these kids for a little bit, right?
We tried for a while, and it wasn't for us.
What was that like?
Well, it was the whole burden of it was on my wife, so I can't say. I mean, I was working, I was doing the career, but we didn't. Well, what happened is we moved to the Caribbean, and we lived in the Turks and Caicos Islands for a period of time, and we loved it. It was so magical. I miss it so much.
I thought about going to the
I
Caribbean.
love the ocean. That's why I'm looking at El Salvador too. They got great oceans, and I like a lot of other factors there. But I miss the Caribbean. Problem was electricity would go out all the time. You got the hurricane season. It was really hard to run my company from there. But we
Yeah.
decided to start trying homeschooling because we were living in a foreign country in the Caribbean, and it was just like the school integration and all of that. And we were on this little almost desert island. Like we were like there was only like 200 people living on our island.
Wow.
And you
wow.
had to drive across a causeway to get to a more populated island. Then you had to take a ferry to get to a more populated island. And we were like in the boonies in the island world. It was like backcountry island life.
There's two. The Caribbean has British side and American side. Is that right?
Well, there's also Dutch colonies.
Okay.
There's I don't know if one's still controlled by Spanish, but there's during the whole pirate era and all the sugar trading era, those countries were in steep. I think the Portuguese still control some. Aruba's still controlled by the Dutch government, for instance. Some of them have held on to a few small territories, but it ended up being a big fight between the British and the Americans. I think at the very end. So.
Or do a lot of Americans relocate to the American Virgin Islands or the American Caribbean
A
Islands?
lot of them go to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And the reason is because you have a huge tax incentive to go to Puerto Rico. The way the U.S. tax system is set up, like I can move to El Salvador tomorrow, but the U.S. government still demands taxes, even if I never come back here.
Yeah. You have to renounce your citizenship.
You have to unless you move to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is the only jurisdiction where you get released from most of those taxes by living in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is just an enormous tax haven for those reasons.
Yeah. What are the tax benefits, or like how are they saving taxes? Is it just like no income tax?
You're basically exempt from most taxes as living in Puerto Rico as like a permanent. You only end up paying like the local tax to Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And like Puerto Ricans don't pay tax. That they have like a form of representation. They're not a state, they're a province, and they're always fighting about if they want to become a state. If they become a state, they have to start paying taxes. And so, that's one of their treaties of being a territory is they're exempt from taxes. And so if you move there, that's the only you can renounce your US citizenship. Or you can move to Puerto Rico. That's really the only ways you're going to legally get rid of your U.S. tax burden.
But do you just have to live there, or do you have to like move your business to be based out of there?
I think you don't quote me on this with Puerto Rico because I quit looking into it because I'm probably not going to move to Puerto Rico. But even though I would consider it, but I'm sure you have to stay there a certain number of days of the year. That's how it always works. I mean, even state taxes, these Hollywood people have an attorney that tells them, you got to leave. You can't be here for 3 more months because you're going to pay more state taxes or whatever. It's like that. I think you have to be there at least. A lot of the times the rule is you have to be there at least 50% of the year. Something like that. I don't know. There's nuances to every country. I'm not fully versed on what it is right now.
So why'd you rule out Puerto Rico?
Well, my family doesn't want to move to Puerto Rico, and the real estate is already just insanely high because it's been a tax haven for years.
I see. Yeah.
And I don't get the component of a second passport.
Yeah.
Which is a huge downside. And so I'm really interested in El Salvador, potentially other places. But I want the safety of a second passport because without a second passport, you're basically just... You're not a true global citizen until you have 2 passports. If you have 1 passport, your government can lock you down, just like during COVID. If you have 2 passports, you can say, no, I'm a citizen of this other country. You guys can't lock me here. And so, having a second passport makes you a more flexible person in the world, just in general. Okay. And so I do want to get it for that. But my problem is being able to... I would love to live in El Salvador 50% of the year. But, my kids got friends in the school system here. They don't want to relocate. I don't want to do that to them when they're in high school and junior high. So there's all kinds of complications with me in trying to get it done. So
have you looked into the process, like how difficult it is to get citizenship?
It's really
there?
easy. It's really easy. I mean, you can go there and start the paperwork process, and you'll have it sorted out very quickly if you work for with Escape to El Salvador or some of the people there. But Bukele's made it fascinatingly. I mean, he's trying to attract wealthy Bitcoiners to come there and build an economy.
That's the president, I'm guessing.
Yes,
okay.
Bukele. Yep.
Oh wow. Is there any place that you think is easier to get a passport? Like for an American, say they want to get a second passport somewhere, so
there's
they're not...
a lot of places that are really easy. I would check out Plan B Passports. That's a company. If you're interested in looking at different options, they help people like you and I get passports in a second country, and they know all the rules. They basically do what I do for a living, except they're helping people get passport. They're helping people like you guys get passports.
Yeah.
So it's a similar type of business structure, but they're outstanding. I think I've met them at a Bitcoin convention before, but I think they work in about 12 or 15 countries, and on their website they'll explain the country and why this is maybe the best benefit for you and why this one
and
maybe
walk
is.
you through it step by step.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Said Plan B passports?
Plan B passports. I think
was the Escape to El Salvador?
Escape to El Salvador. They just do it in El Salvador, but they're awesome. I've met the owners of that company, and they're really cool guys.
Are you actively in the process of getting a citizenship now?
I'm not. I've been wanting to for years, and I can't get over the hurdle of having to live in El Salvador for 50% of the year and trying to manage my life.
I gotcha.
If I was single, yeah, great. I could do that in a heartbeat.
How do they? Can you just get property there and still say you're living there, or how does that work? How do
They'll monitor. They'll monitor if you're there. I mean, you got to get your passport stamp to come in. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to know if you were there or not. I mean, and the reason these countries have these rules, they don't want to just import people. They want you to become part of their story, part of their nation, part of their identity. It's it's not just to build some sort of tax thing or whatever. It's they're doing it so you want citizens to be invested in your country and your culture. You know?
So, what do you think about Dubai and all the immigration they've had?
I have never been to a Middle Eastern or an Islamic country. I don't know anything about that area of the world. I know a lot of people say Dubai is great and that they love living there. I'm totally open to the thought of it, but I've never set foot in that cultural region of the world, and it kind of has this all these red flags to me because it's always an area that's warped. I mean, I don't know if this would affect Dubai, but I'm always worried about Saudi Arabia and Iran breaking out into war. They're always on the edge of war. I mean, how would that impact Dubai? It's right there. I have no idea, but I'm not saying I'm totally worried about that, but I just feel
it just raises concerns.
Yeah, but I don't want to be on a 10-hour flight away from home when I've got El Salvador 3 hours away. I love the proximity.
To Dubai.
I didn't realize
it's 20 something.
20 exactly. So
I didn't realize El Salvador was so close.
I didn't know that either.
I think it's a 3-hour flight from Atlanta, so it's just a quick little hop over. It's like living in the States. You can just get. I can get to New York City in a day's travel. So
Yeah, that's a huge advantage for Americans, the South America being so close in some of those countries. Costa Rica is, I think, a 3-hour flight from here.
Yeah, my brother just got back from Costa Rica. He took a trip down there to see one of my buddies. What is he doing? His business, they rent out these battery-powered, have you seen those surfboard things that have the long tail on them and you can ride them on the waves and stuff?
Definitely.
They do that, but it's battery powered.
Nice.
So you don't have to have waves and stuff. And so he's renting them out to tourists and stuff down there. But Yeah, I didn't realize it's on the same like time zone and stuff too.
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
and El Salvador is north of Costa Rica, so it's closer
Really?
to Costa Rica.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't know that.
El Salvador is just,
Well, I
just
should know
south of Guatemala, and Guatemala is just south of Mexico. So you go Mexico,
Yeah.
Guatemala, El Salvador. It's just
Yeah.
this teeny little spot right there. But it's beautiful too. It's got mountains and volcanoes and waterfalls and a great ocean and some of the
What do
best surfing in the world. So if you're an outdoorsy person and adventurous, it's great.
Oh yeah, then I'd love to go visit. I'd love to go visit.
That-
I loved Costa Rica when I went.
Yeah, Costa Rica
Yeah,
and El
Costa
Salvador.
Rica's beautiful.
I haven't actually been to Costa Rica, but I've heard they're very similar in nature.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
I went to Costa Rica. I noticed the same kind of cultural optimism and happiness.
Did you?
You know, and satisfaction. Their country motto is Pura Vida, the pure life.
Yeah.
And they're
yeah.
just all about like family
Yeah.
and gratitude and
yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
My
You
mom
know,
got a
it's cool-
tattoo
Really?
of it whenever she got back because she
That's
liked
cool.
it so much. Yeah.
Well, in particular in El Salvador, I mean, when I went down there the first time, it was right after Bukele got in office. Like he cleaned it up. He'd been in there for like a year and a half or something, and like I mean, the people I talked to down there, I've never heard stories like this. They were like, we didn't let our kids leave the house because what the cartels do is they apprehend children, and then they train them into the drug trade.
Yeah.
From the they're indoctrinated from that big up, and that's how they get new soldiers. And so they were imagine every day worrying about your kid getting apprehended by a cartel, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And now their kids are out biking and playing soccer in the streets, and they don't even think. I mean, to go from
Yeah.
that to that in basically the snap
huge.
of a finger, it was
Yeah.
a remarkable change.
Yeah.
So they just walk around with these big smiles all over them. They're so freaking happy. It's like,
Yeah.
what are you
Yeah.
guys all happy about? Well, they went from hell to heaven in record time. and
Yeah.
it's pretty remarkable.
I love that, and I love Costa Rica, but I went there and we went to like a tourist area. It was like a resort, so I've never really experienced like deep Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Or like the real culture of it. But I think whenever my brother went, he did. I hadn't really had a conversation since he's been back, but I need to ask him about that tonight.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a physically fit dude. Are you big into like any type of like health supplements or anything like that?
I am. I take quite a bit of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Like natural stuff?
Yeah, mostly natural.
Yeah.
I mean, I take, basic supplements like L-arginine and, a lot of the amino acids and stuff just to keep my blood moving and stuff. But I anything specific you're asking about? Or
We got some
like-
Fire Blood. Have you tried that yet?
Fire blood? No, I don't know what it is.
Okay, so Fire Blood is Andrew Tate's new supplement.
Okay.
It's the
And
one that
it's-
has like 6,000%
It's
of.
of everything.
Yeah.
It's like this hyper-packed amino acid, vitamin, mineral supplement, but it has 0 flavorings.
Okay,
And the
interesting.
marketing is genius because he markets how bad it tastes because it's supposed to be like pain and
Yeah, I
everything
love that. I like
yeah,
it a lot.
And
Would you like to try it?
Sure.
You want to try it?
Sure.
Where is it?
Maybe,
From my experience last time, like I'm just gonna try to put it down as quick as possible.
why don't you smell this first?
Because whenever we say like he advertises that,
Smells like a wet
I
dog.
thought it smelled decent. I thought it smelled
Pretty
decent.
neutral.
Like not bad. I've had a supplement that smells like that before. But when I say he advertises that it is terrible, it's terrible.
Yeah, we'll see.
It
But to answer your question about health stuff, Corbin, one of the things
Yeah,
I'm a
well.
firm believer of is hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Oh,
I don't know
yeah.
if you guys use that or have
I
ever
don't
used
even
it.
know
I do
what
it.
that is.
I do
What
it
is that?
regularly. It
Do you
is
have a chamber?
Yes,
Or a
you get
pod?
into I
What?
get into a chamber and I sit under pressurized oxygen for an hour and watch Seinfeld mostly. But it's great. The science on it is it's settled. It does so many wonders for your body. From wound healing to recovery to brain fog to regrowing cells to
Yeah.
Really?
to regrowing dead nerves.
Do you
It
have
is-
this set up at your house?
No. I drive to a facility and do it. So
Where is that at?
it's you wouldn't want to do it. It's in Dripping Springs where I go. I mean, they've got them all around. I go to Dripping Springs because they've got really good prices.
What do they
Because
charge?
it's expensive. If you buy it in bulk, like if you buy 10 or 20 sessions, which you
Yeah.
really need to have results anyways, they scale it down. But if you just buy one session, it's like $200 a session or something
Okay,
like
wow.
that. But
Yeah.
it is highly effective.
You've-
most NFL
you've
stars.
seen a lot of benefits from it yourself.
Absolutely.
Really?
It changed my life. I mean, a few years ago, the stress of my job was just destroying me. I was having serious health complications. I'd gone to so many doctors, nobody could help me. I ended up
Yeah.
flying around the country to go to different doctors. They just wanted to pump drugs at me.
What were
I
your
found
complications?
I was having nerve pains
Oh.
all in all kinds of places, and nobody could figure out why. Nobody knew why. Hyperbaric oxygen treatment saved my ass. It really saved
Really?
my life, and I try to do it regularly now. I
I was gonna say
feel
like
so good.
what's a good like how often should somebody be doing this?
Maybe once a month. But if you've got something so what it does, like it'll kill viruses and bacteria in your body. It will lower every form of inflammation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What it does is you're sitting in a tank and they put you in 100% oxygen, but then they put it under pressure.
Yeah.
And that pressure causes when you breathe it in, your cells absorb 3 times more oxygen than you would if you weren't under that pressure. And so every cell in your body just starts to suck in way more oxygen. That oxygen-rich environment, it kills bacteria, it kills viruses, starts to regrow your brain cells that have died through all kinds of things. And you really start to feel clear-headed and everything after the first few sessions. And then it gets into deeper healing. Like, I have severe tendinitis from being on a computer all day, and nothing would help.
Really?
They got me on inflammation drugs. Those are brutal. I quit taking them. Hyperbaric oxygen, it makes it slowly start to go away. It
I've
actually
never had
gets
anybody recommend that yet.
deep
Me
in
neither.
and heals the tissues. So I'm astounded by it. I recommend it to everyone. So
Yeah.
How much would it take to like have your own chamber?
well, it would be very dangerous because oxygen is highly flammable. You have to have a certified hyperbaric oxygen technician to do it. I mean, maybe there's avenues to do it in your house, but someone would have to get certified, because the thing is, like, there can't be a spark in the chamber.
Okay.
You have to wear static
So you
proof
can't smoke a
clothing. You
cigar
have to
while
stay
you're doing
grounded.
this.
You can't bring anything. Yeah, no cigars. If a spark goes off, you will burn alive, and they will not be able to
Shit.
open the door because it's under pressure. And then,
Yeah.
like, this has only happened like 2 or 3 times in
I don't
world
wanna do
history.
this anymore.
No, it scares
I'm
the
already-
shit out of me. But like, it's only happened like 2 or 3 times in world history. Like, they've got so many safety precautions, it's almost physically impossible. But you can't have a
Almost.
spark, only cotton clothes, and they keep you
Wow.
grounded by a little thing around your wrist.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, but so it's not something you'd want to like play a game with
Yeah,
for sure.
do something
you know?
like that. Yeah,
Wow.
much safer to go somewhere and do it.
Wow.
Before we try this, just look at this and just read like just go through and look at like the percentage of the daily values of the vitamins
All right.
on there.
Yeah, huge.
It seems like overkill
thousands.
to me.
I mean, I take a supplement that's pretty close to this already,
Really?
and I
Yeah.
always wonder, is it? You know, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's overkill,
Like,
but you know you have your needs met.
But
though,
it's
that way.
overkill by like, well, so I get blood work regularly, so I know. Like, that's
Yeah.
one thing people don't do like right now. They like, everyone's trying to take minerals and supplements, but they're not looking under their hood and seeing like,
Yeah.
are your magnesium levels low? Are your
Yeah.
vitamin B12 low? Do
Yeah.
you need the supplement? And so I get regular blood work every 3 months to see what I'm lagging on, and then I'll increase my magnesium levels or whatever.
That's smart.
I've
So-
wanted to kind of test my blood levels. Where do you go? to
There's
do
this company called Ways to Well, and my
Yeah,
business
they're big
partner
and awesome.
found them on Joe Rogan.
Yeah,
I'm in
he
love
used
with them. They get my blood work done. They've got a specialist that talks to me. They get my blood work done every 3 months. They run a comprehensive report on what should be optimal of every vitamin, every mineral, every hormone, everything in my body, and then they measure where it's at and they say, okay, you're too high, you're too low. They assign supplements to me according to where I'm at with these things, and then in 3 months they want to see improvement. And if they're not,
Yeah.
they're gonna change around what I'm taking. So you're not just blindly taking shit. You're finding.
Yeah.
I think there's such a lack of looking under the hood in our
Yeah.
culture when it comes to health.
But you're like
So-
optimizing your levels.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they've been
Yeah.
improving every few months, and I'm sleeping better. Everything. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend them. They've been amazing to work with.
About how much do they run?
How much does it cost?
Yeah.
So like every time I do my blood work and have a consultation, they charge me a few $100s.
Okay.
And that's been only quarterly. It's not that expensive, I don't feel
Okay,
like.
that's not bad.
So yeah.
Yeah.
A great program, and I just feel like everyone should do at least a service like that.
Yeah.
So,
They sponsor a lot of local athletes,
They
Really?
do.
fighters and stuff.
Yeah, I've had a great experience with them.
I'm gonna
entirely.
have to look into them. There's a trash can right there.
Yeah. So if you need to puke.
Just in
I'm
case.
pretty stable. I'm sure I can handle it.
All
Okay,
right.
guys.
Are we
Well,
chugging the whole thing?
Yeah.
You can.
Cheers. Guys, I'm tough as nails when it comes to that shit. It is bad though. You're not gonna lie there.
Oh, I almost sent it.
so
I
bad.
almost threw
That
up.
is yuck.
I almost threw up all over this table.
Oh
Oh my god, it's so bad.
Not tasty.
I had to rinse my mouth out whole. And I'm proud of myself. I couldn't even do it last time. I got it in my mouth and I was like, no, I'm not. I couldn't do it.
Ugh. Puts hair on your chest.
A lot of times the healing's in the bitter and astringent flavors, man. If you take like teas and tinctures and some of the better herbs, they all have those like bitter, hard flavors.
Yeah.
I agree
It's
with this
interesting.
concept. It's part of the healing. You know, we've bred this shit out of all of our crops. You know, we want everything to be sweet and everything to be, you know, this or whatever. But we've really bred out all those bitter and astringent flavors, and a lot of the health properties in plants come from the bitter and astringent flavors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You know, almost everything therapeutic involves some form of pain, whether it's yoga, weightlifting, cardio,
Exactly.
ice
Yeah.
bath, sauna. there's always some pain you subject your body to that
Yeah.
creates a healing
No
effect.
freebies in life with anything.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, if it's too easy, you're going to pay for it somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely anything. Yeah, I personally believe the universe. Yeah, if you get lucky and win the lottery or anything like that, those people are always broke in 10 years. You don't.
Yeah.
There are no freebies in the universe. There's always a cost.
Yeah, yeah. People always, like, I have some people that are always brag about, like, oh yeah, I can take a tequila shot and not make a face. And what I always say is, like, try a shot of apple cider vinegar. Try a full shot of apple cider vinegar and tell me the same thing.
I gotta get some
see.
more of that. That reminds me,
we'll see how
actually.
tough you are.
Yeah.
Can I ask a different closing question this
Yeah,
time?
yeah.
If you, let's say you sold your company for $1 billion and you wanted to do something philanthropic to help people, what would be your master plan that you could just write a check and then make happen?
You know, I'm from South Dakota, and one thing that a cause that's really big on my heart is we have a very large Native American population in South Dakota. We have 9 reservations. They live in extreme poverty. They live in more poverty than most of the countries that I travel to in the third world. People
Really?
don't realize. I think the average income in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in western South Dakota is, I think, $4,000 per family.
Wow.
And so it's an astute third world level of poverty that is in the western half of my state. It's ugly. It's just ignored. You know, all the big philanthropical companies are, you know, nonprofits out there that give to these kinds of causes. They all do it overseas. Nobody is looking domestically at these people in this group that needs a need in our country. So that's always been something huge on my heart. I would
Yeah.
give back to something along those lines. But also, what I do for a living, I mean, I have a heart to help people. I love, the passion with this business is I am helping people come from very poor and humble beginnings. And this is an opportunity for them to really take a social economic step forward.
Yeah.
And they all do. And it's really beautiful to watch that. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to know that something you do isn't just making money. It has ripple effects of good that go
Yeah.
throughout. And so I would definitely spend that money, you know, focusing on some domestic issues, but also just there's various groups I've met overseas and that I've worked with for years. The Afrikaans in South Africa. I love those people, and they've really had a hard run the past few years. And
Yeah.
I would probably do some things to give back to them and try to help them out within their situation. But I would do a lot. I would truly
Yeah.
do a lot, and I think my mind could rattle on for days about what I could do with $1 billion towards
Yeah.
that kind of cause. So
I used to have a different answer, but this last week that I was in Boston, I met with this gentleman on Instagram. His name is Victor the Good Boss. He has like 700,000 followers on Instagram. And what he does is he gets drug addicts clean. He goes through and he'll like sponsor them and stuff. And he has like legit charity and everything that he goes through. But he went and we met one of the dudes that he's sponsoring right now, because I guess the drug population there is like crazy bad. And so that's something that he's doing that
Yeah.
really inspired me. Just letting him talk to me about it and explain like the processes and everything that you have to go through. So I think that's something that I would throw a lot of money towards.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it, and I love I love giving back and helping. And so many people don't have that concept when
Yeah.
it comes to making it yourself. You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
If you had something, what would yours be?
I would I would actually find major inner cities and build Robin Hood-esque MMA gyms for the kids. Because MMA and stuff is actually kind of a rich kid sport. You have to have a Muay Thai membership. You have to have a jiu-jitsu gym. You have to go to a personal trainer. And so a lot of kids, they're kind of gate kept from learning these things that I think everyone should have access to
Yeah.
because of money. And so I would probably hire coaches to put in there so that way you're also helping like ex-fighters have a path. And then find some way for these kids to be able to apply for a scholarship,
Yeah.
something they feel like they're earning it. And I just start placing these in big cities like New York, Dallas, San Antonio, LA, and just have a network. And I wouldn't necessarily coach myself, but I might travel and teach a little bit, train a little bit, but do all the hands-offs. Basically make it a hands-off type thing.
Yeah. Well, we have a ton of entrepreneurs and business folk that watch the podcast. So if there's a way that they could reach out to you if they needed help getting some employees, where could they reach out to you to find you?
Boy, that is kind of hard. I mean, I guess I'll give you my website information. Our website is www.h2visaconsultants.com.
Okay.
My company name here in the States is H2 Visa Consultants.
Yeah.
And our business in Paraguay is International Connections, and that website is internationalconnections.net. And they could check out any of those websites and
Awesome.
get in touch with me through that. If they contacted anyone on the line through those and just asked for me, I would get that message very quickly.
Awesome.
So that would be a way.
Anybody that's interested in buying a business.
Anyone interested in buying my business, they can come and talk to me at any point. I am definitely open to that conversation. I would be interested in at least exploring it.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, Mr. Kevin, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
thank you
awesome.
guys. It's
This
been
has
a
been
pleasure.
pleasurable. Thank you so much.
Yeah.